Three. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining this afternoon. Hope you had a good lunch break if you were on that time zone. We will start the afternoon with information about the product, news, and new features. So the presentation is made by Anton Saratov, Vice President of Application Engineering at DataAdvance. To background information about Anton, just as a quick reminder, we have again merged the two first sessions of this afternoon, so you don't have to switch to the second one, which was initially in the agenda regarding a roadmap and new features. You can stay on that one. The total duration will be 40 minutes. So a few words now about Anton Saratov. He's, as I said, VP of Application Engineering at DataAdvance, and he has graduated from the Institute of Physics and Technology in 2010 with a master's degree in applied physics. He worked as a researcher at the Institute of Nuclear Research, and since 2013, Anton has been working as application engineer at DataAdvance to his current position of VP of Application Engineering. With this, the title of today, Anton's presentation is New Features of P7 and pSevenEnterprise. Anton, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Laurent. Hello, everyone. Indeed, last-minute changes in the schedule, so we merged two presentations, and it means that I will cover both the product features and the future plans for most important aspects of our product. And I will focus on pSevenEnterprise as kind of the key new product on the market and the place where I put most effort in recent time. So some of you may remember this slide from previous user conference and from other materials we share about pSevenEnterprise. And this is the major parts or components of pSevenEnterprise application scenarios and capabilities. So of course we have the workflow engine in order to automate your processes and now in the collaborative environment share with other users inside your company. We have blocks which enable to the construction of workflows, and this block library is growing. And what's more important in pSevenEnterprise, you're able to develop your own blocks of any type of complexity, which opens new horizons of, let's say, catching the methodology inside the company. Then we have the layer of apps or let's say workflows considered as services covered with custom user interface or not, or used directly via API connections from external systems. And yeah, we still have our optimization, algorithmic core, and machine learning techniques inside. And all of that is now in the cloud with the cloud native features like scaling and access from anywhere. Last year, we were putting a lot of effort into improving different aspects of pSevenEnterprise, and mainly it was about the workflow engine itself, including the significant user experience improvements to make the work smooth and more convenient. Of course, the multi-user collaborative environment, so more users, more deep integration with customers' internal network and corporate policies, and the block library, which is always growing, and we have something to show here today. And next focus, or let's say parts of the product where we'll put more and more attention, and we'll announce some of those today, are still the block library, still the multi-user say experience and sharing experience, and more focus on the apps hub and the deployment of apps in general. So that's what I will try to cover today, combining the slides with already existing features, slides on the plans where how we plan to improve and extend our capabilities, and the live demo. And since we're talking about the live demo, we need a bit of a story here, not to consider the boring artificial examples. And our story is, again, maybe familiar to some of you, is about the technological process of pultrusion. This is the continuous manufacturing process uh, where you pull your composite through the chambers where it's heated in order to be cured or fully polymerized. In the end, you have your beams or of different cross sections. And this story, yet similar, opens a lot of application scenarios for our product. So first of all, we have a simulation of our process, and it may be reused because despite the cross sections and particular settings can be different, the model, the simulation behind is always similar, considering the heat transfer, the chemical reactions, and the stress inside those different profiles. But the overall scope is always the same. So even in the automation part, we have a place where we can reuse and extend the application of the workflows. But of course, the most interesting part comes from the study and using of those results of simulation. And here we have two very typical application stories. First is the optimization. So how to define the optimal process setup in order to achieve best performance possible within the given limitations. So such optimization can be considered as the step before actually going to production, like design phase or even online optimization for given operating conditions. And the second story is the predictions of our quality of our product in the lab, so directly, where we have a place for approximation models as the source of fast estimations of our responses. In this story, we will have 4 parameters just for you to be ready to see them in the different parts of the workflows. It's the pulling speed, so how fast we produce our product, and the temperatures of different zones. It's initial temperature of materials and different temperatures in the chambers, which we can adjust in order to increase or decrease the polymerization rate. And we want to reach the highest production speed. We want to maintain the high polymerization rate because that's the quality of our product. And we want to limit the maximum temperature in the product, not to overheat the material. And of course, we have a stress limitations to prevent the deformations. So that's the story. More about scenarios. As I already mentioned, we have a simulation process automation itself, some simulation model, which need to be wrapped into the form of workflow in order to reuse it here and there, drive those simulations in an automated way for new parameters, values, and so on. From that automated simulation process, we can go into, let's say, design process offline before we actually go to any lab. We may check what are our recommendations for optimal process for different conditions. So that's more classical optimization study on top of simulation model. Or we can go in a similar way into parametric studies, generate our DOE in order to train our approximation model to be further used in the second practical scenario, which is here. It's the using surrogate models as a service for fast online predictions. So here we design our process based on simulation model. Here we generate estimations or predictions for our actual equipment in almost interactive manner. So all of these shapes are in fact workflows which can be used and reused inside the design process and further in connection with the production line. And it means, and it's important for enterprise, that all of those workflows can be and sometimes should be linked or somehow connected to external data sources or data streams. Imagine I have my lab equipment with sensors here in this online prediction story, and I need to catch those values in order to generate my predictions and return them back to be accessible for online control. Or in simulation process and design, I want to merge those workflows with the SPDM process, where I store my models, results, and control my business operations. And pSevenEnterprise allows you to do all of those, considering any workflow as the part of a bigger ecosystem. So that's the intro for the whole story. And if we will try to catch all options and, let's say, features of enterprise in one line, it may be the following. So we need to capture and reuse our processes, collaborate and share, and deploy them at scale. From this line, I will take different words to show different parts of our product. And first one is capture and reuse your processes. And this is, of course, about the workflow engine and the experience of how we automate, build our workflows, and what we can do here. As you already know, P7 provides you the very powerful workflow engine in the cloud, since we're talking about enterprise. So it's centralized deployment, all benefits of cloud applications like fire and forget. You don't care about resources and everything. And it's a low code platform. So we have intuitive and visual representation of our workflow. And it's also immediately is the order and the actual kind of code which is executed when we run it. We have all the benefits of P7 workflow from V6 with the nested loops, logic operation, branching, and also the workflow encapsulation, so nested workflows, automated parallelization of sub workflows, and so on. And with enterprise, we have a full heterogeneous environment. So we have our cloud resources, and we have so-called extension nodes, which allow us to include the Windows stations into the full pool of our computational resources. What are the performance improvements and user experience improvements in the last year? They here are presented in one line, since they are small compared to big features, but actually they bring a lot of convenience in everyday usage. So it's automated cycle recognition, it's validation of port connections in the block info panel, improved link dialog and outlinking, batch mode and composite is finally public. We have also new data editor widget and new data types in order to enrich the options for data transfer and analysis. We have new indication of run status, which allows you to, in one glance, understand how your run is going. And a very nice recent feature, we now have email notifications about your workflows status. So if you missed your workflow was finished, you will get your email notification to check your results. That's what we will see here and there later on in the live part. And there are also performance improvements. This type is always boring to explain, but in fact, a lot of work was done in the background to speed up the data transfer, especially when we're talking about big data files and samples. We worked a lot to reduce the disk consumption, so kind of tuned and balanced the logs and everything. And a new execution strategy, which we called on demand, when blocks in the workflows are executed only when it's their turn to be executed. So they do not consume your resources before it's their turn to run. Contrary to the previous strategy, when all blocks were, let's say, preheated before the workflow starts. That allows you to more efficiently utilize the resources on the cluster. And it's important in case of very big workflows, which are now is the case for many of our customers. So that's what we'll see in live. And the second part here in the workflow section is, of course, the blocks. So finally, we have a design space exploration block arrived to enterprise. It has all the benefits and features of DSC block from V6, including smart selection, different options for settings, types of variables, and all the techniques which we know are working really well in the real application examples. And the nice benefit of enterprise, the DSC block can now generate reports for pSevenEnterprise with pre-configured plots. We will see it in live part. More improvements in Python script block, our, let's say, main working horse, which allows you to do everything. Finally, it has a testing during the edit and nice features in the code editor, and also some internal capabilities like in-block caching, which is helpful when we are doing some integration code. And the last part here is the custom block development, where we also put a lot of attention to make it more convenient, more flexible, more powerful to develop your own blocks for your own needs. It includes the new time system, the dedicated storage at the platform level where you can keep the shared code between your own blocks, the block publishing procedure, and the templates for to create your own block and with less effort. So now I will switch to the live part just to demonstrate here and there those improvements I just mentioned, and also to check how the DSC block works in enterprise. So here we are in the enterprise. Our start panel, I see my workflows, my recent runs. And first of all, I will briefly cover the Python script block improvements. So here it is, added to my workflow canvas, the only block, just to show you the testing mode. So I have very naive script here, which is producing the F as output with an X as input. And now I can use the run button in order to check that everything is okay. I have my logs. I also printed the list of modules available in the standard Python in enterprise. And it's a lot of modules, including most important and useful like NumPy, SciPy, and so on. And in the results, I can check that my calculation finished successfully and everything is working okay. This test mode of Python script is something which makes our everyday life easier when we develop our workflows. Next step is the workflow itself. So in our pultrusion story, I hope you still remember that we started with the pultrusion story, we have a simulation task. And the workflow looks like that. It's a standard linear workflow, nothing fancy or complicated here. We have inputs of our parameters, pulling speed, temperatures, and the simulation results as the end of this workflow. I will hide the annotations. This is the simulation of single evaluation point. So you set your values, you get your results, and then we can reuse this workflow later. Here, for example, we can see how the block validation works in the port panel. So even before the run, when I set up my workflow, and imagine it can be much more complicated and it's harder to track how the connections are organized, I can see that all my ports are marked as green. It means they are connected and there won't be any issue when I start my workflow. They will receive some value from somewhere and will be able to start. Now I can remove the link to pulling speed port, and it's now gray. It means that it will work. Nothing wrong with it, but it is not connected to any other block or input ports, and it will use this default specified here. However, if I will remove the default to not set, my validation will be red. It means that this block won't be able to run during the workflow execution because one of the ports doesn't have either default or it's not connected. So I can connect it back and it will be green once again. So that's the story of the validation in the block info panel as an example of one of the small but useful improvements in the usability in the platform. Back to the global picture. So our workflow doing the simulation. So we have some text input file to be prepared, some solver in the batch mode to be executed, and post-processing to happen. But the solver is actually an exe file, so it should be executed on the Windows machine. And even in this simple case, we have this block to be executed on the extension node, which is attached to P7 native cloud resources. And I can actually, with one click here, specify that this block should be running on this dedicated machine, which is under Windows control, and it has all required solvers to run. That's how easy you can set your heterogeneous workflow execution. You literally have some blocks running anywhere because we don't care and they don't have special requirements. And some blocks can be executed where you need them to be executed, in this case on the Windows node, which is attached to P7 cluster. We can now run the workflow. It will create the run instance. And you see this text, the color marking. So queued to run. Now the P7 cluster tries to allocate resources. We are using our public cluster. Yeah, it took some time to find slot, but now it's finished almost immediately, and we have our results ready to check. That's about the color marking. Now to the interesting part. Yeah, we have this workflow. And we have these 4 parameters as inputs and 4 parameters as outputs, as we discussed. But we know that our solver is always the same. So in any pultrusion process for the similar equipment, we will have the same parameters: pulling speed, temperatures, and temperature of initial materials. Some internal settings also may change. And this is the part where the custom blocks may bring the value. Before, in desktop P7 version and even at the beginning of Enterprise, we considered the ability to create a custom blocks as the way how you can attach your own solvers or develop the integration with the software, which is rarely used and only belongs to you. But now we see that custom blocks is something more than that, because we can consider custom blocks development is not a development of connector to some solver, but more as the way how you can capture your repetitive process on a small scale. So custom block may be a step of your workflow, not in terms of technical connections, but in terms of methodology of simulation. And that's what we saw today in the very nice presentation by Technip, where they actually capture steps of their design process as blocks and then combine those blocks in the workflows. And since our signature of the workflow is the same for similar inputs, for similar outputs, we can replace this workflow with a single block and use it later on as the ready single block model for this pultrusion simulation. And this is a simple block. It doesn't have any interface during the edit. If I will try to open it, I will see my help panel, let's say. But it do all the work it should do. It receives the 4 inputs and produces my outputs. Next part is DSC block. Finally, it's arrived to Enterprise, and now I can create my design space exploration studies. Here is a standard workflow. Inside the composite, I have my simulation model, and I can easily organize my connection. So what's inside the DSC? Same as Enterprise, I have my variables, all the settings, responses to a set of different evaluation types, and the smart selection on top in order to select the best technique suitable for this task. So with these settings, I can easily organize DOE for outputs, evaluation type, letting hypercube automatically selected. And the only thing I need is now to close the cycle or to connect the blocks to each other. So linking dialog. I can do it manually, or I can rely on the auto link, which will propose me the best matching here. The heuristics is improving. And with that, I can close my cycle and see that P7 recognized it immediately. And now it's colored with the blue. So it's recognized as the cycle inside the workflow. I can launch the DOE to check what will be the results. I have my run already executed here. So green, finished. I can double click here to go to my run results. And that's where I have standard CSV results and the dedicated format for pSevenEnterprise here under the design specification block, all designs, feasible designs, and optimal designs in a format of P7 table. That's where I can use a report. Let's create a new report and simply drag the design table from my DOE to report. And it will say, yep, I have some plots already pre-configured. If I will import this file automatically generated by DSC, I will get my results here in already configured plots manner. So that's how DSC works. All benefits from enterprise, additional options from desktop version, and additional options from enterprise in terms of custom reporting mechanism and results. Of course, I also can do optimization studies. I won't pay much attention now. So all the potential parametric studies which are supported by DSC is now available in enterprise. Coming back to the slideshow, what next? Of course, more blocks. Loop block for more convenient setup of simple cycles, while and for cycles. Text block for interactive substitution and parsing of text files. Program block, which is the again the interface to set up your command line execution in a more simple manner. A prox builder and player, and UQ. More improvements in workflow orchestration usability, including the notification panel, where you will have all the collective information about your current runs and events, and the monitoring of resources, which is more important maybe for administrating of the platform. And we are going to prepare a brand new custom block example, which can be also used as a template in order to facilitate your block development. That was the part about the workflow features and plans. Next part is, of course, about collaboration. So reuse, collaborate, and share. We just saw examples of how I, as a single user, is working with the workflows. Yes, in the cloud, but there is no collaborative aspect here. And of course, it's one of the most important parts of the platform. So important and maybe the biggest upcoming feature by the end of the year is the workflow by link. What is this? So we know that P7 users can share their workflows and data with other users inside the platform. But what if I want to use the shared workflow or my own workflow as a sub workflow of a bigger story? So I want to embed the workflow as part of my simulation. And this workflow can be maintained by some other person. I don't actually want to copy this workflow. I want to refer to it. I want to link it into my workflow, because if there will be any changes introduced, I would like to use the most recent updated version. So it will be a special block which will act as such a reference block to some other workflow, and it should be available already in November. I have a prototype of this block just to show you the idea. So here is my DOE block set up, and I want to recreate the same story, but now it won't be this simulation model as a part of the workflow. It will be a link to a simulation model. In order to do that, I will go to my workflow library, add my prototype of workflow by link block, open it, and actually I need to navigate to the workflow I want to embed in my bigger workflow. So here I will get all the list of my workflows available, pultrusion. Yep, and I need this simulation. No, it doesn't work. Simulation. My bad, a lot of workflows, and the size of the block is a bit off. Apply, and with that, I will have all the parameters of my workflow propagated as the parameters of this workflow by link block, and this block will act as the connector to my initial workflow. So no more copy of that workflow here, just a reference which will be used during the execution. I can now connect the doesn't propagate it yet, sorry. Why it's not propagated? Save. Yep, configuration saved, and now I can connect without a link all the important ports, and that's how I organize my workflow by link connection. So yeah, what I just showed is a prototype. Yeah, connection just dropped. It doesn't matter for the sake of the demo. Yeah, and the full public workflow by link block will, I don't know what's happening. Probably somebody's canceling something here. Yeah, the full public block will be available in November with more features than I just showed, including the tracking of the changes in the initial workflow. Because of course, if the signature of the initial workflow changes, I cannot refer to it anymore because it's just not valid link. So workflow by link, important next step in the collaborative part of the platform. And in case when I have many different people working on different sub workflows, different disciplines, and then I want to combine those all into, let's say, master workflow, performing the true multidisciplinary study. Another one also coming and also long awaited is the snapshots. I don't have any early demo to show, so I will just cover the basic ideas of this concept. And it's actually a versioning system. So when we change our workflow, sometimes we see that the current state is good and we want to save it somehow. So it's actually will be a feature which will allow you to make a snapshot. With one click, you will be saving the current state of your workflow to be able to refer to it later. It may be on demand. So when you decide that it's a good time to make this snapshot, or on event. For example, when you publish your workflow to Apps Hub, the snapshot may be created automatically in order to be able to refer which version of your workflow you actually published. It will be propagated to workflow by link, so you will be able to reference to a particular version of the workflow you are linking to. And Apps Hub will also receive version, and these versions will be updated when the app is republished on top of the previous version. So here is the draft of how it may look. So you have your app of version 7, and then you can switch to other versions of your app, but actually your runs are referring now to this particular version. So you have, let's say, a tree of results. It's a version of the workflow or a snapshot of the workflow, and then the runs of the snapshot in order to navigate between them. And the runs are different by the inputs you set. So those two are two most important features coming in the collaborative aspect of the platform: workflow by link and snapshots in order to control your versions and refer to them later. And the last part is maybe the part where we put biggest effort in the backstage. It's share and deploy. at scale. At scale is important here because it brings the requirement to be deeply integrated in your corporate IT policies, user management system, network requirements, and all that stuff. So we see more and more examples, demands, and situations where P7 should be tightly integrated into ecosystem which already exists. Maybe data lakes, data streams, SPDM systems, and all of that. And with that, you of course need some dedicated features to organize such merge. And one of the biggest here is the Keycloak integration. Keycloak is the open source identity and access management solution, which enables you single sign-on, two-factor authorization, and even synchronization of users of enterprise with your current Active Directory setup. We also worked a lot on user policies like disk space quotas, access rights, and so on, and even branding in order to make the platform more visually connected to other platforms in the ecosystem. Why it is so important and where this integration comes into play. So one story is SPDM, which we'll have covered later today. And another one is workflows as services. So any workflow can be used as a service due to REST API, and you can connect those workflows to different other systems and use them on request, on event, to calculate your results, perform optimization for digital twins, even with the usage of actual online data to initialize your model. You can organize predictions using the approximation models, or calculate your responses with simulation, or introduce the mixed approach, hybrid approach, when you combine those two. And of course, all of that can be again integrated with databases and data streams inside the system, including the online data flow from the equipment. In order to control this massive development and deployment of such workflows as services, we're going to introduce a run center, which is the part of the apps hub, where the person who take care of those services will be able to control all the services in one place in the form of the list, check the status and versions of services in use and actively running, track the progress, and deploy actually those services. So start, stop, and schedule the execution, including the auto restart for the waiting workflows. This will be the last big feature I would like to announce by the end of the year. So the Run Center, a way how you control your workflows as services in a centralized manner, and you manage them. That's it on my side, and we have a couple of minutes for the questions, if any.
Thank you, Anton. Don't know if you hear me.
Yeah.
Perfect. So questions. First one. For the workflow by link, what will happen if the initial workflow changes? Is it checked, and when?
Yeah, that's important part, and it's not in the prototype I showed, but actually it of course is a part of this feature. There are two parts of this answer. So first, what we can easily check is the collection of ports in the workflow we're referring to. If the number or order of ports changed, of course, our link is not valid anymore, and we need to rework it. And that will be changed on the first iteration, the start of the workflow, and then it will be changed like regularly to ensure that your connection is still valid. And the second part of this question is more tricky because sometimes you may introduce changes in your sub workflow to which you link to, which are changes, but they don't change the workflow significantly enough to consider it as a new one. Minor cosmetic changes, I don't know, internal port naming and so on, something which do not affect your work. And in this case, the snapshots are really important because snapshots is the kind of a mechanism which allow you to make sure that you connect and link to the version of the workflow you actually want to. So that's why snapshots is really synchronized in some sense with the workflow by link here.
Okay, perfect timing, because you just mentioned snapshots. I have one about snapshot. Will snapshots support the revert to previous version? If yes, does it include the blocks settings?
Oh yeah, I see. Yeah, currently we have the undo button. Maybe some of you know that, which allow you to kind of revert back to previous changes. But with snapshots, it will be a bit different because snapshots will be a deeper copy than just settings of your workflow. And it will be more like an actual snapshot. So it will store your block settings and even the blocks themselves with their code and so on. So revert in the for previous snapshots will actually be a full restoration of previous versions. So it won't be only link settings and port settings, it will be also the block settings, uploaded data, and so on. So full revert to the selected stage in your workflow development.
Okay. A question more oriented to the roadmap. When the program block will be available? What about SSH connection or HPC? Will it support it?
Okay. I don't have a precise date for the block roadmap. The first one will be definitely loop block, and it will be available somewhere this year, and program should be probably next. And of course, it should cover all the cases which are covered by the program block in desktop mode. So first implementation potentially will be oriented towards Windows command line execution, but then it will be definitely extended to SSH connection to external machines, which are not attached directly to pSevenEnterprise resources pool. And maybe here the main application scenario is the external HPC cluster. So you will actually organize the offload to the queue of the external HPC cluster. And one more comment about program blocks here. I'm talking about the block which will be like a part of the platform. But for many application scenarios, our department, application engineering department, already developed some blocks which may be used. And if you going to have any proof of the concept phase or just want to try something, we can provide you with those blocks directly in order to already start this process before the program block in the native program block on the platform will arrive.
Okay, that's clear. Thanks a lot. I don't see any new questions. So I invite you to switch to next session, which has already started. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Speak to you.